Hey everyone, Joe here with the Idaho Prepper channel, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the 5-shelf freeze dryer and commercial grade pump by StayFresh freeze dryer. So I will say I am affiliated with StayFresh. They were kind enough to send me out this unit to review and to keep. And I also make a commission on each one of these freeze dryers that I sell from this video or future videos. So just want to be upfront about that right off the bat. I will say this, I've been making YouTube videos for about 3 years now. I have a lot of companies that reach out to me to market their products and review their products, and I turn down the vast majority of them, mainly because I just don't feel confident in the product. So I want you guys to know that I do a lot of research before I affiliate myself with any company. So I'm going to tell you why I think StayFresh is the way to go if you are in the market for a freeze dryer, what really separates them from their competition. I also kind of walk you through the setup of this machine, how it functions, and I'm also kind of give you guys my thoughts on why I think purchasing a freeze dryer is a good investment. So there's a lot of different avenues that you can explore if you are a freeze dryer owner. So I'm also going to make some food. Obviously, we're going to make some meals and we're going to get them freeze dried, and then we're going to taste test them. So there's a lot to cover here, but I'll go ahead and we'll start with why I chose to stay with StayFresh. The main reason this really separates them from most companies is if you have any issues with them, you call the number that's provided with this company and you speak directly to the engineer of this machine. So the customer service is just unmatched. I was just blown away. So his name is Tim. You talk to him. So if you have any issues with this unit, he'll sit there on the phone and work with you, troubleshoot it. And also, all of the internals of this machine are very easy to access. So you just got some panels here that are all fixed on here with Phillips head screws. So Phillips head screwdriver, you can pull the panels off of here, exposing all the internals, and all the internal parts and components are all very easily interchangeable. So you call the number, you speak with Tim, he tells you which part you're having an issue with. They send you out the new part, you pull the old part out, plug the new part in, close it all back up. It's that easy. So that right there was kind of the main selling point. Once I heard that, I was like, I'm sold. That's pretty awesome. So you're going to be investing a lot of money into a machine like this. You want to make sure that if you have any issues, that those issues are easily and quickly resolved. The other thing is just how well this machine is built compared to its competitors. So everything in this machine, it's very hermetically sealed, so you don't have to worry about any type of contamination. You have stainless steel parts in all of the areas that it counts. And there is one component in here that really makes this unit stand out and separate itself from the rest. And it is basically a valve that is connected to the computer. So when you have a freeze dryer, and it's going through the freeze dry cycle, what tends to happen is you get kind of a vacuum situation going on. And this is with all freeze dryers. And if you don't have this component, this valve that turns off when it's going through the freezing cycle, what can happen is you can run the risk of basically sucking in oil vapor from your pump and contaminating your food. So if you guys are using this machine to make food that you're going to sell, or maybe you're doing like medicinal herbs and you want to make absolute certain that you're not going to have any contamination, this is the machine to go with just because of that part. So that to me is just a huge deal breaker if you're shopping for freeze dryers. Now, with kind of that out of the way, I'll kind of give you my thoughts on why I think this is a good investment. So the obvious one right off the bat is the money you're going to save making your own freeze dried food. So you guys know, you preppers, you know how much freeze dry food can be. One bag, hiker's pack is like up to $16, $17. for a premium bag of freeze-dried food. Whereas here, you can essentially make 5 trays full of food, which probably work out to at least 10 or 12 bags of freeze-dried food for probably under $10. So you're saving a huge amount of money. Now, yes, there is a big startup fee involved, but once you pay that, you're going to be saving a ton of money, especially if you're really trying to increase your food stockpile and you want just a massive amount of your food stockpile to be comprised of premium freeze-dried food. This is the way to go. The other thing I would say is for those of you who have maybe food allergies, there's people in your family that have food allergies, and you're buying a lot of freeze-dried food, either because you're hunting, you're camping, you're doing a lot of hiking, or you're just trying to create a massive stockpile of food in your prepper pantry, and you have those food allergies, those certain food proclivities, you're just particular about how your food is prepared, you can do that all yourself. So you can have a big stockpile of freeze-dried food that is catered to your own personal needs. And that's just something you'd never be able to achieve, looking on Amazon for freeze-dried food. They just don't cater to those particulars. So that would be a big reason to invest in a freeze dryer. Now, the other reason is maybe not only do you want to create a stockpile of food, but also have like a side business or a full-time business, in freeze drying, because freeze drying food, especially candy, is like the hot thing right now. I actually was at our local farmers market and I ran into a guy, him and his wife were actually doing that as a side business. And they were doing pretty well from the sound of it. They were freeze drying candy because that's like a real popular thing. And it's really easy. The freeze drying candy is actually goes a lot quicker freeze drying than meals. So I think that's one of the main reasons why a lot of people are doing that and getting into the business, because you can basically create a lot of candy really quick with one of these machines. So that's another reason. So with those reasons out of the way, I'll go ahead and kind of briefly walk you through the setup. Now, you'll notice I'm in my garage right now, and that's kind of one thing you'll want to think about is where you're going to set your freeze dryer up. As you can see, I got it on a pretty substantial, bulky table. I made this table myself. These machines, these units are very heavy, so you're going to want a very robust table to set these up on. And you're definitely going to need at least 2 people to pick this thing up and put it anywhere. This is a very, very heavy unit. But once you all have it set up, these are great machines to use. So like I said, the setup is actually really easy. Just basically connecting cords. You really can't mess it up. There's just one way to do it. And as you can see, you got a tube here. It's the vacuum line that comes from the pump. You got this line here. This is what you release when you're done freeze drying. And then there's a valve on this side, which just drains the water when you're done freeze drying. So all the ice that's built up in here, as it thaws, it just drains there. So I'll go ahead and I'm going to show you some of the things that come with this unit when you buy it, or any freeze dryer from StayFresh. First thing they send you is Mylar bags. So a bunch of 1-gallon Mylar bags. I think there's 50 in here. And then they also provide you with oxygen absorbers for those Mylar bags. And they even, this is really cool, provide you with an impulse sealer to seal all those bags. So put your freeze-dried food in the Mylar bags, throw in an oxygen absorber, seal it up with your impulse sealer, and you have a high-quality, premium-grade, professionally sealed bag of food. The other thing they send is just a container for extra oil. So what ends up happening once you've gone through a cycle of freeze drying, you end up with oil vapor inside of this unit right here, and you just pull it off and it will dump the oil back into this container. But you want to make sure to put this filter on. So there's a filter here. You filter out all the oil and then you can reuse the oil. So you could probably get 8 cycles on the same batch of oil before you have to replace the oil. So pretty cool feature there. The other thing they send you is this little blower thing here, and this actually goes inside of this container. Once you're done with a freeze drying cycle, this will blow out all of the water that is in the pipe there, ensuring that your next batch is all ready to go. So they pretty much thought of everything, give you all of the components that you'll need to not only freeze dry your food, but also maintain the machine as well. The other thing they provide is this probe here, so you can hook this up. There's a wire inside here, and that way, if you are kind of particular about the results of a certain freeze-dried meal, you can put the probe inside of the food or whatever you're freeze drying, and then just gauge the settings that way. So this machine will turn off once it reaches an internal temperature as opposed to an external temperature. So I will say, they sent me out this unit like close to a month ago. So I have been researching it. I've been, consuming a lot of literature on this unit, watching a lot of videos, but I'm still by no means like have I mastered this unit. So I can't really get into all of the nooks and crannies, but I'll make sure to leave, there's some guys that have really done deep dives into all of the components and all the different functions of this machine. But like I said, it's still pretty new to me, so I'm still kind of learning it. But it is very easy to not only set up, but also to use. So you can see here, you got 4 buttons on the display screen. So you have freeze dry, you have defrost. So the defrost button, once you're done, it will defrost the unit. You have your functions, basically self-explanatory, and then settings. So you get this unit, you set it up. It's really easy, all self-explanatory. You make your food, you put it in the trays, you put the trays in there, you hit freeze drying, and whether it's food or you're doing candy, there's just buttons for that. So let's say you made a bunch of dinner entrees, you just put frozen food because you want to pre-freeze your food before you start the freeze drying process. That's something you're going to learn when you read the owner's manual, but it's just, if you just put food in there right out of the oven, it's going to take forever. It's going to have to, cool it down, freeze it. So make sure all your food, your entrees are pre-frozen. It's going to save gobs of time in the freeze drying process. So just push the frozen food button and then you push start. Everything goes on. You're done. You don't have to worry about everything. Everything is pretty much preset. So if you don't want to get, into all the different settings, you don't have to. You just, super easy. Just push the start button and you'll have your freeze-dried meals. So very easy to use. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead. We'll make some meals. We'll get them freeze-dried and then we'll taste test them. All right, you guys, well, I'm all done with my entree here, and I'm gonna go ahead and spread it out on my trays. But real quick, I'll just tell you what I made here. So this is my spin on a chicken pasta primavera. I ended up using the small rotoni shells. Pretty much everything in here is really small. It's something to keep in mind when you're making any kind of meal. Just make all the proportions real tiny. So I diced up the chicken and the vegetables into 1/2-inch chunks. And that's just going to help with the freeze drying process. The other thing to keep in mind when you're freeze drying anything is just try to keep your fat content as low as possible. You don't want something, don't want to be trying to freeze dry something that has a lot of oil and fat. It's just going to be very difficult to properly freeze dry that fat, and you might run the risk of it going rancid once it's in the bag. So doesn't mean you can't have any fat in there. I ended up putting a little olive oil, a little bit of avocado oil in here, but I didn't do any butter. So just something to keep in mind. It's just like with dehydrating food. You just want to keep the fat content as low as possible. But basically what this dish is, it's my spin. So we use some red peppers, some yellow peppers. I have some carrots, some onions, and I put a little bit of jalapenos in here because I always like spice with my dishes. And I have some broccoli in here, and then the chicken, obviously. So I think it's gonna taste good. I actually haven't even tried it yet, but I put a lot of spice in here. That's good. I can't wait till it reconstitutes. Looking forward to getting this freeze dried and then reheating it and eating it again. But you know, with the Alfredo sauce, I ended up just using a packaged sauce. I didn't want to get too fancy, and I didn't use any butter. I just put maybe a tablespoon of avocado oil in there in the sauce to substitute for the butter, and the rest was just milk. So I kept this dish very, very lean, but it still tastes very good. We'll go ahead and we'll spread this out on our trays. You know, the other thing to keep in mind too is just make sure that when you're preparing your food, keep everything nice and clean, because, you know, if there's any bacteria in here, you know, or you didn't cook this properly or something, you didn't wash the food properly, it's not going to get treated. The freeze drying process is going to preserve whatever you put in here, along with bad components too. So just make sure that when you're preparing your dishes here, that you're keeping everything nice and clean and as sterile as possible. So I've already gone through and I cleaned all these trays really well. The other thing I didn't mention is I actually did a pre-freeze dry run, an initial run where I actually just put regular bread in all these trays and freeze dried it just to kind of do a test run. It was something that was recommended by another channel that I watched. This guy who's familiar with the StayFresh freeze dryer. So he suggested to just do that first run, just do some bread. And that way, if there's any like smells or anything, like from the factory, everything being new, you know, it will absorb into the bread. Plus it kind of gives you a chance to just kind of familiarize yourself with it. You don't want to be putting in a lot of expensive high-end food on your first run and then doing something wrong. So that first run, you know, just do something really cheap like bread. All right, we're gonna go ahead. I'm going to put some saran wrap over these and then we're gonna load them up into my box freezer downstairs. All right, guys, well, we're back. It's been a little over 24 hours. My food has been on the trays and freezing in the freezer, so it's nice and frozen. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna move over to the freeze dryer, and I'm gonna walk you through some of the things you wanna make sure you have done before you start freeze drying your food. And then we're gonna go onto the screen and I'll show you the basic settings that we're gonna use to freeze dry our first entree here. So just letting you know, I'm going to be using all of the default settings for this first run. So I'm going to try to keep it very uncomplicated. So first thing we're going to want to do is head over to our pump, and this valve on our pump, we're going to want to make sure that it's closed. Now, some of the videos that I watched, they kind of recommended keeping it open for a little bit while everything kind of gets running and then close it. But it's kind of unnecessary. So we're just going to go ahead and just close it. Now we're going to go over to here and make sure that this valve is closed. Now this is the kind of the air vacuum release valve. So once you're done freeze drying your food, you would open this up and it would release all of the pressure inside the chamber here and allowing you to open up the door. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure that's closed. All of our fittings are nice and tight, so everything's tight. This is the oil diffuser catcher right here. That's on, that's tight. This valve is closed. We're gonna walk over to this side of the machine, and this is our drain valve. Make sure that's closed, so that's closed, and that's going into our bucket there. So I think we are ready. I know everything is plugged in, so we're going to head over to the back of the unit, find the switch, turn that on, and now our screen is activated. We will go ahead and we will push freeze drying, and we are freeze drying frozen food. So we'll hit that, and then we're going to go over to settings here. And just so you know, when you turn this thing off, no matter what you do to your settings, everything, once it's turned off and then turned back on, gets restored back to the default setting. So you'll see here, freezing time exceeds 12 hours. So we're not going to be using that because our food is already frozen. Shelf temperature lower than 5. So that's when the drying will start, once our shelf temperature reaches 5. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this machine on, and then once the shelf temperature is lower than 5 degrees, that's when we're actually going to load our food into the chamber here, because like I said, it's already pre-frozen. So that's it. We're going to go ahead and keep all of the settings here the same. We'll push back, and then we'll push start. And you can hear the machine just kicked on. So it is starting to basically cool. So we'll go ahead, we're going to let that do its magic, and then we'll check back here once the shelf temperature has reached -5. Okay, so our shelf temperature has reached -5. So we're going to go ahead and load our frozen food into the chamber here. So go ahead, open this up. As you can see, I got our frozen food nice and frozen. So we're just going to go ahead and start loading this into the slots here. So take the saran wrap off our food. All right, go ahead, close that. And then what we're going to want to do is hit our food in chamber button, and that will do it. And if you noticed, the pump just kicked on. So looks like we are now in the drying process. All right, so now it's just a big waiting game. So this is going to take quite a long time. So I'll probably report back to you guys tomorrow, and we'll see what our food looks like. Okay, our freeze drying is complete. So I'm going to go ahead, open up the door, and pull out our trays and see what our food looks like. So we'll go ahead and we're going to open our air valve, and that releases the pressure in the chamber. Go ahead and open up the door here. I think I'll just pull out one tray here. So the trays are actually nice and warm, not cold like you'd expect. The food feels very dry. So I think that's what we're looking for. I can't imagine it getting much drier and crispier than that. So I'm actually going to break a piece of chicken apart. It's just kind of churning to dust. So I think that's what we want. I'm good with it. So I'm going to go ahead and load these up into our Mylar bags. Okay, so I went ahead and I put some rubber gloves on here. Even though this food is most likely just going to be in our pantry for my family and I still want to keep gloves on just to make sure I don't have any cross-contamination going on. So I'm going to go ahead, take our first Mylar bag here and open it up. And it looks like it opens kind of from the top. You seal it from the top, and then on the bottom it has the little notches where you can, kind of tear these open. So that's pretty cool. But I'm going to go ahead and get all of these bags loaded up, and then we'll put our oxygen absorbers in it after they're all loaded up. And I'm actually just going to kind of eyeball this. I'm sure if you were going to package this to sell it, you'd probably want to weigh it, make sure that you have equal proportions. But I think I'm just going to eyeball it. So we'll just put as much food in here for maybe like one meal, and we'll call it good. Okay, so I got all of the bags loaded up with food. I'm going to go ahead and open up our oxygen absorbers. And definitely keep in mind when you're doing this part, you have to work a little quick. So not terribly quick. I think you have probably like a 14-15 minute window on the food. before it starts to like reconstitute again, especially if it's really humid in your area. So make sure you probably, when you do this, it's not like a super humid day. But either way, you always got to try to work kind of quickly. So go ahead, get our first bag here, put an oxygen absorber in there. I already have my impulse sealer already sealed. And actually, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get as much of the air out of here as possible before I seal that. And then we'll get it sealed. All right, got to turn the heat up on that. Yeah, sometimes with these impulse sealers, a little tricky at first. You don't want to get it too high because it'll melt the bag. And if it's too low, it won't get a proper seal. So, all right, I think that did it. I'm going to call that good. So our first bag is done. Go ahead, another oxygen absorber. Try to get as much air out as possible. And we will get that sealed up. All right, guys, well, we are all done. And I have all of the food packaged up and labeled. So the other thing I did was I actually went and bought one of these containers, these totes here. I actually picked these up at Costco, and they come with this lid. But these are pretty durable little totes here, but they're perfect for survival food, I think, because you're definitely, if you're going to be packaging up your freeze-dried food in these bags, you're going to want to put them in some type of hard case, whether it's a tote or a bucket. That way you just can protect them from mice getting to the bag and chewing through the bag. So I thought that was a cool idea. But what we're going to do for now is I am going to do this taste test, and then I'm going to give you the cost analysis on this freeze dryer, and basically a total breakdown on what it cost me to make all this food, including the energy costs. So first thing we're going to do here is I'm going to get some water boiling for our freeze-dried food. Kick on our, and there we have it. So we'll go ahead, let that boil. I got my freeze-dried food here. So we're going to be taste testing this. But while that's boiling, I'm going to go ahead and give you a cost analysis. So the food, and I added a little bit more just because I was short in the video. You notice I wasn't able to fill up that last tray. So I added some more food in here. I figured I just added another $1 for the food I was short. So with the 2 chicken breasts, the 2 peppers, the jalapeno, the broccoli, the onion, the box of pasta, Alfredo sauce, and some basic seasonings, that came out to $14.25. And then we had the packaging, which I found on Amazon. You can actually buy the 1-gallon Mylar bags, and they come with the oxygen absorbers. So 1 Mylar bag and 1 oxygen absorber is going to run you 80 cents if you purchase it on Amazon. And I'll make sure to leave links for all this stuff in the video description. So 10 of those, since I figure, 5 trays is realistically going to create 10 bags of food. So 80 cents times 10 basically is about $8. The electricity. So the StayFresh freeze dryer with commercial pump, the average draw on that unit is around 1,500 to 2,000 watts. So 1.5 to 2.0 kilowatts while running. Now, a typical cycle length to complete from start to finish to do that freeze-dried meal is somewhere between 30 to 40 hours. So you're looking at 40 to 60 kilowatt hours. Now, my electrical costs here in Kootenai County in Idaho, I'm very fortunate. We have actually the lowest electric rates in the country. So our rate per kilowatt is between 10 and 12 cents. So extremely cheap. So that's somewhere basically to run a to do a whole meal cycle is going to run you about $4 to $6 if you live in a very cheap uh, area for electricity. So, with that said, that brings us to $26.25 to make 10 premium packages of freeze dried meals from start to finish, complete with bag and everything. So that breaks down to $2.72 a meal, which compared to your premium freeze dried meal, you buy on Amazon, you buy at the store. Like I said, it's anywhere between $13 to $17. Some of those really high end premium meals were $16 and some change. And then you figure in tax and all that, you're paying upwards of $17 plus per meal. So to be able to make your own premium meal for $2.72, that's a crazy savings. You're basically saving 80%. So the other thing is to look at that from a marketing standpoint. For those of you who want to do this as a side business, you're going to sell, maybe you're going to make this food, sell it at your local farmer's market. Let's say you sell these meals for $13 a piece. I mean, that's 75 or 79% profit, which is crazy. So yeah, you're just saving gobs of money is basically what it comes down to. So if you want to do this as a business, there's a lot of money to be made, so long as you live in an area where the electricity is cheap. Because I know in California, you're looking at somewhere between like 45 cents to 50 cents per kilowatt. I mean, if that was what you were paying for electricity, that's probably going to, tie or eat into your profit. But I still think that even with that, there's still profit there. So I think our water is done boiling. I'm going to go ahead and turn this off. We're going to open up our jar here. Hopefully that's hot. Hopefully I got enough water here. All right. I'm just going to eyeball it as usual. I think that's good. Go ahead. We'll put our lid on. I'm going to let that steep a little. And that's going to be ready to eat in no time. So back to this. So yeah, again, you guys, I mean, if you want to invest in one of these machines, I definitely think it is worth your while in terms of savings. And let's say, you decide, you get one of these machines, you don't like it, you can sell them and get probably recoup most of your money. So yeah, food for thought. So let me know in the comment section, if you think that's a good deal or not. Now, with that said, I'll just go ahead and let you know, if you are interested in purchasing this freeze dryer, you can head on over to their website, and from the link in this video description, and you will find this unit, the 5-tray commercial pump unit, on sale for $700 off right now. They're still kind of at the tail end of their summer deal, so you can get in on that right now and get $700 off this unit. And if you are a military veteran or you're active military, you can get an additional 10% off. So that's really cool that the company offers that discount to our veterans. So that's pretty much it. Now I'm just going to wait for this to reconstitute, and then we'll do a taste test.
Few moments later, a few inches later, 2 hours later, 1 eternity later.
Okay, so I think our food is perfectly reconstituted. I thought I put a little too much water in there at first, but it's fully absorbed now. So go ahead and give this a taste. It smells good. Wow. The flavor is good, but actually that's not what's surprising me. What's surprising me is how well this reconstituted. This is far better than anything I've bought. commercially. This is better than Peak, better than Mountain House in the sense that it tastes fresh. You know, with like freeze dried meals, there'll always be like some crunchiness, or it just never fully reconstitutes. It's just like chewiness. This is like I just made it. That is weird. There's like no sense that this has been freeze dried. I'm not, and I'm not just trying to sell this product right now. That's crazy. The pasta tastes perfect. Like it tastes al dente, like I just made this. That is bizarre. Even the chicken just tastes normal. That is weird. Huh. All I can think is like, is that just a result from like freeze dried food sitting in a bag with an oxygen absorber that makes it chewy? Because this reconstituted flawlessly. I mean, other than it being kind of overly wet, because I did put a little too much water in here, this tastes like I just pulled it off the stove. It doesn't taste like it was freeze dried or dehydrated or like anything happened to it at all. That's bizarre. I'm, you know, I think what I'm going to do is I'll taste test, you know, maybe in a year here when this food, or a couple months maybe, when this food has had time to sit in the bags that I sealed them up in. Whoa. I'll taste test it and see if maybe just the food sitting in a bag for a long time plays any part in it tasting freeze dried, but that's perfect. It doesn't taste like it was freeze dried at all. So that's going to do it for me today, you guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comment section if you have any questions for me. And if you're interested in any of the products like the freeze dryer, I'll make sure to leave links in the description along with discount codes, if any. And if you haven't done so already, please make sure to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel. And if you want to see more videos like this in the future, go ahead and hit that notification bell. So with that said, until the next time, stay prepared.